Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to what is potentially the keynote presentation of DreamCon 2020, which is connecting and securing the enterprise, and in particularly connecting and securing the enterprise via an API-led strategy. I am Luke Marshall, the General Manager of DreamFactory API Management, and with me is my CTO, Jason Gilmore. Jason and I have been running DreamFactory now for a few years, and we've really found that APIs have become ubiquitous with a future of connectivity and security for enterprise applications. What we found is that APIs are either available for most common applications or they have to be built from the ground up. And this is really where DreamFactory comes into the party and excels. Slide, Jason. DreamFactory is able to seamlessly connect and generate an automatic REST API for all of the following data sources. And in particular, why this is important is the complexity associated with hand coding an API can often take days, weeks, even months in some cases of the more robust connections. In the ability of DreamFactory to automatically create the API, you've just saved developer time, cost, and effort associated with that hand coding. What this further allows you to do is securely integrate and connect all those essential modern applications with legacy data stores. And this is where we're really finding an API-led strategy coming to the front of mind when we've got outdated servers, outdated applications, Excel spreadsheets, all holding extremely valuable data that cannot be accessed securely. In doing so, DreamFactory is able to not only authenticate the API, but layer on top of that organic security controls that allow you to move DreamFactory into your middleware alongside all other aspects of your stack. Today's presentation really is about highlighting how our current user base is using DreamFactory to move into an API-led strategy, how they are connecting multiple enterprise applications through a unified middleware, and more importantly, applying rock-solid security controls over those connections to ensure that we have secure access both internally and externally to that API. Secure access not only means the ability to view the data that's being viewed through the API, but also limit those that are able to use the API, log who is using it, and then conduct an overall audit on what your API health is all about. Throughout the course of DreamCon 2020, we'll also touch on some external partners that offer monitoring tools, analytics tools, and we'll also show you how to auto-generate an API for all the most common data sources. Jason, would you like to take us through some of our more complex, but certainly more interesting API-led deployments in our current client space?
Sure thing, and thank you, Luke. So over the course of the remainder of this presentation, I'll just walk you through a number of different client use cases. These are all live. These are all architectural diagrams which have been created as a result of closely working with a number of organizations around the world who are hailing from a wide variety of industries and certainly who vary in size. So the first example involves a global chemical manufacturer. This company manufactures paints, fiberglass, stains, etc. And they have a very forward-looking IT team. I had the opportunity to spend actually several days with this client over the course of our engagement. And they use DreamFactory for actually to satisfy a variety of use cases, one of which involves simply generating REST APIs for a number of databases. However, secondarily, and I think the far more interesting use case, involves their creation of a micro app framework. So here at DreamFactory, we talk to a lot of companies around the globe, and because of that, we were able to pick up on macro trends, if you will. And one of the trends, clear-cut trends of 2020, has in fact been this trend towards micro app development. And just a quick definition of a micro app. A micro app is a very focused application that reaches into an enterprise application and extracts a very specific task. So for example, maybe approving an expense, or maybe checking into and out of a network operations center, or maybe requesting PTO, right? These are all tasks that are typically bundled into a larger enterprise application, and it becomes tedious to repeatedly enter those enterprise applications and perform those tasks. So a micro app seeks to extract that functionality out and give individuals, users, a very fast, very efficient way to perform that task. Furthermore, these micro apps are responsive. You can handle them just as easily on your laptop as you could your mobile application or your phone. You can take advantage of the fact that the data is pushed to you in a micro app, right? You're not required to go determine whether there are outstanding expenses that need approved. Instead, there are notifications that come to you. And finally, in a perfect world, these micro apps might have a relatively short lifespan. And that's because they're so easy to develop, to deploy, that your staff has the luxury, if you will, of creating these apps and then effectively throwing them away after their use has run its course. So returning to this client, they have built
Jason, just to talk more on that point as well. I invite our attendees at this stage. We actually have a full presentation on how DreamFactory is sponsoring this micro app trend via our work with Citrix Workspace. So I encourage all of our attendees to check out that talk, and you can find a link to that in this video description, as well as on the DreamCon homepage. So please check that out. There's some really interesting and really deep diving into how to build these organic micro apps for your front end users.
Great point. So this particular client has, like I said, really forward-looking IT team. They've built a micro app framework on top of DreamFactory, which allows other departments within their organization to use a point-and-click interface that will generate micro apps. These micro apps can talk to DreamFactory generated APIs, which are backed by maybe an S3 bucket or a SQL Server or MySQL. Furthermore, these micro apps restrict login, they restrict authorization using DreamFactory's Active Directory plugin or connector, right? So probably the most interesting live example of a micro app created by this organization is a network operations center access management tool. Their network engineering department used this framework, again, point and click, drag and drop form fields to create this NOC, Network Operations Center, check-in, check-out micro app. When a network operations, a network engineer is about to enter a NOC, they authenticate via Active Directory, they press a button to check in, they do the necessary work within the NOC, they leave the facility, they check out using a checkout button. So it's a great example of a highly focused micro app that they were able to build and deploy in no time, thanks in part to plugging into the DreamFactory platform. Next use case is a global management consulting firm. So this is an interesting use case in that this firm has long had a complicated and extensive mission critical ETL pipeline that has been around for a number of years now. And this ETL pipeline is consuming data from a variety of enterprise applications, CRMs, content management systems, and so forth. That data is pushed into as you can see in the diagram, a master staging database, and then it's pushed into what they call the master hub, which is effectively a data lake. Further ETL transformation is used, as you can see at the top of the diagram, to transform that data and make it available within a number of staging and consumer databases. Now, prior to the introduction of DreamFactory, a variety of legacy consuming systems plug in to those databases using standard connection libraries. But what was happening is that that process was becoming too heavy, too time consuming for their development team to build new applications, to build new executive dashboards. It was too difficult to deal with authentication and authorization. So what they did is they dropped DreamFactory alongside this data lake. DreamFactory plugs in to that data lake by way of the existing staging and consumer databases, restifying those databases and exposing secure API endpoints, which can then be, of course, reused across multiple new applications. And what this has done, not surprisingly, is it has dramatically improved the turnaround time associated with developing these new applications. Furthermore, because of DreamFactory's rule-based access control integration, they are able to create read-only APIs. They're able to create read insert, insert update, or any combination thereof using the point and click interface, generate a new API key, attach that role-based access control to it, and that can then be integrated into whatever new application is being developed. So
Jason, I really love this. I really love this diagram in particular because I really think it showcases two things. One is APIs as the way of the future and the ability to connect all these different systems via APIs. But I think it also speaks to those companies that have come from what I'd call a legacy company or an incumbent that has been around for a long time. They've built up an internal stack of certain technologies. They've got these new and emerging systems that they've acquired as they've grown. They may have spread out geographically. They may have spread out vertically or horizontally through industry. And all of a sudden, they're faced with this increasing tech stack that needs to be modernized or at least, increased in utility. And you can replace that hardware. You can go through a costly migration. You can, more than likely, you're going to be forced to move to some sort of cloud environment. And in doing so, you almost have to grease the wheels of digital transformation. And without a tool like DreamFactory, that process can become very cumbersome. It can be a long timeline and very costly. And, we're obviously here to push the benefits of DreamFactory in connecting and securing the enterprise. But I really think that this diagram typifies the way DreamFactory can revolutionize the digital transformation by connecting those legacy data systems that have been built up over time. You don't want to have to incur the hardware costs of replacement, but you also have modern data stores, such as a data lake, a data warehouse. You still want to connect to a modern ETL and have these real-time dashboards. And like you say, being able to speed up that development cycle and push those modern applications without having to worry about the associated time and cost replacing those legacy systems, I think is one of the biggest benefits a robust API strategy can really provide you in this day and age.
I really agree with that sentiment. And if I were to really summarize this diagram in two sentences in terms of why DreamFactory can be so beneficial for the enterprise, one, you don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? You have an existing technology stack, existing infrastructure. It's not like you have to replace that with DreamFactory. DreamFactory can enable that existing infrastructure. And two, it gives you the opportunity to extend the utility of that legacy infrastructure, right? You're not, by introducing DreamFactory into your environment, you perhaps don't feel so compelled or pressured to modernize other parts, because DreamFactory can extend that existing infrastructure with modern APIs, giving your team the ability to race forward without first having to backfill all of that and replace all of that existing infrastructure. Let's see. The next example, another one of my favorites, is a global computer hardware manufacturer. Certainly a name everybody's familiar with. Like most computer hardware companies, when you purchase one of their hardware products, you register that product, you license it, and naturally that contact information gets pushed into a variety of marketing vehicles, maybe Salesforce and so forth. And then, as a matter of fact, that's exactly the use case that you see here. We have computer hardware that's been purchased. The new owner fills out the registration forms, licensing, etc. That information flows through DreamFactory by way of APIs. It gets pushed into Salesforce. It gets pushed into a number of existing marketing databases, MySQL, Oracle, MongoDB, and so forth. And in addition to that, they've created a number of executive dashboards which show registration throughput, new signups, et cetera. All of that, of course, can be done in Salesforce as well. But what this does is it gives their team another window into what's going on the with regards to the day-to-day operations, registrations, health of their APIs, and so forth. What is particularly interesting about this diagram or this environment is the fact that the overwhelming majority, actually it's twofold. One, the overwhelming majority of the APIs exposed through this environment are scripted. So in addition to database APIs, file system APIs, DreamFactory supports scripted APIs by way of 3 programming languages: PHP, Python, and Node. This particular user has scripted, I was approaching 600 APIs at last check. And interestingly, all of those APIs are deployed through a CI/CD pipeline. So there's very little human intervention, if you will, with regards to promoting these APIs up through development, into staging, into production. And in addition to that, of course, being a large hardware manufacturer, this environment's running at scale, right? It's truly a globally deployed API environment that's running 24/7, mission critical operation, and has been going strong for several years now.
An interesting point with this one, Jason, that I think speaks to our ability to not only create APIs, but manage them as well, is if we recognize that relationship that this deployment has with those third-party marketing databases, for example, where in which they're looking at aligning inventory management with then marketing information. Another client of ours actually has over 85 different marketing APIs managed through DreamFactory. Bar a couple are actually native connectors, i.e. the universal connector that DreamFactory offers has enabled this client to load up 80 odd marketing-based systems, SaaS products, etc., with their own API onto our platform to then manage that alongside systems like Salesforce, etc. So not only in this deployment can we see how DreamFactory might sync alongside databases that we offer a native connector to, we have other clients that use us for our universal connector, where in which you can load any third-party REST API and interact with it as if it was a native connector. So the ability to synchronize, say, inventory data with marketing data becomes seamless all the way end to end. So I think that's a really interesting parallel with something like this, which would be a very stock standard, use our native connectors, MySQL, Oracle, Mongo. But then if we look at that from a bigger picture perspective, universal connector, load that third-party API, treat it as if it was a native connector, and you've got all your documentation, same security controls, and the ability to push those reports as you would a native connector.
In fact, a point perhaps lost in these otherwise illustrative diagrams is DreamFactory's ability to both perform API chaining and API composition. So per those 85 marketing related APIs, if you wanted to combine data from 2, 3, 4, 5 different APIs, you can very easily do that using DreamFactory's scripting engine. So you can define one endpoint, which when requested, causes DreamFactory to make 2 or 3 or 4 other API calls, retrieve that data, merge it all together, and then return it back to that client. And in fact, that's a very popular platform feature. Okay, shall we move on to, let's see, the next use case. Another favorite, perhaps they're all favorites of mine today. This is a Big Four consulting firm. Another very interesting use case. They happen to be heavy users of an ERP. It's called Deltek CostPoint. And what they do with DreamFactory, this particular client, is they plug in to CostPoint in such a way that they are very easily able to extend CostPoint's capabilities from a reporting and dashboarding perspective, right? Deltek CostPoint does in fact offer an extensibility, and it works great. However, this particular team finds it very convenient to just add a stored procedure to the underlying ERP database. That stored procedure gathers the data that they would like to present within a dashboard or a report. DreamFactory auto detects that newly added stored procedure, and that data can then immediately be made accessible via a new API endpoint. And I found this use case so interesting that a few months ago, I asked their team lead just to, I guess, go into more detail regarding the thinking. And he offered what I thought was a very striking and succinct response. He said, for tools that don't offer an API and where the database is the main point of integration, we use DreamFactory. He said, interestingly enough, he says, we're also a Mulesoft customer, but the overhead of exposing that stored procedure or the table through that system is too much. So if you're not doing a large ETL operation, then they're just going to build that API in DreamFactory, and then they're going to expose it through Mulesoft. And in fact, this is a relatively common use case in which we see clients using other enterprise API management systems like Mulesoft or Apigee. They are using DreamFactory as an enabler for those tools. So we don't really consider these other solutions to really be competitors. Rather, we see the DreamFactory helping users of those existing tools to be able to use them much more efficiently.
And I think what it comes down to, Jason, is that the idea that something like a Mulesoft as an ESB or this robust enterprise solution that offers multiple benefits and functions, part of which is API management, but it's not necessarily their core function in that enterprise deployment. So the ability to actually build a custom API from the ground up in Mulesoft is absolutely there, available to you. But if you are able to have a tool like DreamFactory that could auto-generate that simple API you're trying to hand code through any point, it really, like you say, it enables a more rapid development cycle, a more rapid application cycle, without necessarily losing any ROI on the Mulesoft deployment. Similarly, via Apigee, if you are looking at Apigee and what it achieves as an API management platform, it absolutely can do that. And it can also do a whole suite of other things that DreamFactory can't. But when it comes to the core value proposition of getting a simple database-backed REST API secured and into production in a short time frame, that's where DreamFactory excels. So running that alongside a system like Mulesoft or Apogee won't replace what Mulesoft can do by no stretch of the imagination, but it can absolutely enhance and enable a more beneficial application of using Mulesoft. So yeah, I think I really appreciate that point that we were given from that team lead, because it does highlight an emerging trend we see with our Mulesoft users that are just looking to really simplify that front end, that building block for the ESB, which is that REST API creation piece. So yeah, great use case here.
And for viewers who perhaps are not so familiar with that API generation process, consider heading over to our YouTube channel, where you'll find, in fact, a number of examples demonstrating those capabilities. Next up, another example of running DreamFactory at scale. So this client is a truly global construction materials manufacturer, offices all over the world, longtime DreamFactory client. And you can see in the inset what the use cases looked like for a number of years now. They have a number of facilities based around Europe in which DreamFactory has been installed, and it plugs into their ERP system. It plugs into a number of databases, and DreamFactory works with web-based clients that they've built to create real-time dashboards, which the facility manager can refer to better understand the current status, the current health of that facility from certainly an equipment standpoint, among other things, right? They want to make sure that the equipment is operational and healthy at all times, and these dashboards assist in exposing that, making that knowledge available, that status, if you will. That has worked out so well that presently we're working with this client to replicate that capability within, in fact, many other hubs based around Europe. This particular client, just given the scale, the number of DreamFactory instances that will be deployed, we're using Docker to assist with the deployment, using DreamFactory's Docker container, which is very popular. It's available on Docker Hub. It's also available on GitHub. And just a quick, I guess, tangent here. Our Docker container works very well within Kubernetes environments. No surprise there for any Kubernetes users watching this video. We've had a great deal of experience rolling DreamFactory out within Kubernetes environments over the past 2 years. We've recently released a Helm chart, and that's also available via GitHub as well. So this, like the computer hardware manufacturer, is a great example of what you can do if you desire to use DreamFactory at a continental or global scale and have great ambitions for your API-led infrastructure.
And I think, Jason, one of the key things that I really appreciate about this deployment is, we often speak of DreamFactory as being the Swiss Army knife of API management, in that we can go all the way from creating a simple standard MySQL API in minutes, all the way up to connecting enterprise applications under the one hub, and indeed connecting multiple locations as well, as you can see here. What I find interesting about this case in particular is I remember during the original conversations we had right at the start of this sort of prototyping and POC phase, is that one of the key concerns was being able to secure or enhance security to the access to that MySQL database at the local level. So we weren't even talking about connecting these multiple hubs at this stage. We were looking at DreamFactory's ability to create that API for the internal MySQL database at a single location, have role-based access control down to the table row level, and then actually apply that authentication layer at the top to further refine who can actually read, write, post, pull, etc., that particular database. So from a very simple deployment perspective, we've looked at how DreamFactory can instantly create and secure the API at the ground level to monitor and log that internal access to the database. And then we then draw out to a bird's eye view and see how we can now do that programmatically across multiple locations, and then link up each of those DreamFactory instances to the centralized point. So I feel like this whole idea of a Swiss Army knife is really displayed here when you look at the single deployment in one transport hub and what we were trying to do there, but then more importantly, how we're able to scale that out across multiple locations and in what is a significantly robust deployment. So yeah, I think that's an interesting comment on really what is the theme of this talk, is connecting and securing. You're looking at high fidelity, granular security controls at the individual database level, which can then be translated into connecting and securing multiple data sources via the one easy to use unified interface.
And in fact, I would go so far as to say that this would win the prize as most interesting project of the year if it weren't for what I believe is the next project. It is. The next project is Decision Desk HQ. So this is undoubtedly what I would personally say is the most interesting DreamFactory project of the year, because DreamFactory infrastructure played a critical role in US reporting. So for the recent 2020 US presidential and congressional elections, we teamed up with a company called Decision Desk HQ, which is regarded as one of the top 6 or 7 most respected election reporting organizations in the United States. They place great emphasis on technology, and in fact used technology so proficiently in the recent election that they were the first to call the presidential election for Joe Biden. I believe it was 27 hours ahead of competing reporting sources, so including the AP, including television networks, and so forth. And a lot of that ability had to do with the fact that they use technology to not only retrieve the very latest results, often at the county level, in a very efficient fashion, but then they were able to quickly and efficiently push that data out to their various media clients in a very efficient way. All of this being API driven, heavily cached. As you might imagine, this certainly wasn't an election that was isolated in terms of interest to the United States. There was interest from all over the world, as I believe the next slide indicates. What you can see at the top is a map-based breakdown of DNS requests for Decision Desk HQ. And as you can see, effectively very close to every country in the world was querying Decision Desk, often by way of what they called embeds, which are infographics, which were embedded in various news reporting websites. But also there were quite a few API calls, which were being made by their clients to create tables, to create real-time reports, and so forth. And in fact, as you can see at the bottom, of course, the election was November 3rd. API traffic, or total HTTP traffic, was pretty slow leading up to that date because there was testing was going on. On the 2nd, things started to pick up, and then of course on election day, total requests skyrocketed and remained quite high for the following 72 hours. At I believe 3 days after the election, there were close to 4 billion requests had been made, and I believe 400 terabytes of data were served. And really an amazing project. And it was really great to see DreamFactory infrastructure run at true scale over the course of several days. And in fact, also in this conference, you will find a separate presentation involving Decision Desk HQ's CTO, Chris Green, and myself, just talking through this project. So I invite you to check that out at your convenience.
Yeah, and I think what's great here, Jason, is viewers might be asking, so what does this mean for the enterprise? I think if we focus on that security perspective and performance management, we look at how secure those APIs were for consumption on the end, the logging and the limiting we had in place to ensure that those APIs were able to be accessed in real time, were able to be monitored to ensure no malicious access was there. And again, the ability to handle such high volume over a concentrated period is obviously something that should be very appealing for anyone who wants to sit an API middleware behind their firewall and push large swathes of data through those APIs at any given time. So I encourage our viewers that when they're thinking about this deployment in particular, it's very unique, it's very bespoke for its purpose, but the fundamentals of that API infrastructure can be applied across any number of use cases. The amount of layering we had there for redundancy, the amount of logging and limiting we had available on those APIs, and really just I would suggest the high performance of that infrastructure over time has been really great to see from a DreamFactory deployment. This was absolutely the largest sort of battlefield test we have ever put DreamFactory through, from a volume perspective, from a scrutiny of third-party perspective. And I'm really proud to say that we come through with shining colors, and the data speaks for itself. It really does. And again, I reiterate Jason's encouragement to view that talk by Jason and Chris, because it really breaks down what that infrastructure looked like and how we were able to achieve such great results for our client in Decision Desk there. So yeah, really, really great way to see how DreamFactory operates in the field at high volume and in any manner of deployment across the enterprises. So yeah, great deployment there.
Yeah, very exciting project, and I'm certainly glad to be catching up on sleep this week.
Yeah, for sure.
Two more quick graphs. This just shows at the time these were taken, you can see total number of HTTPS requests approaching 3 billion at the time that this was taken. And then, as I mentioned, 400 terabytes of data at the bottom. And that's it. I hope everybody found this useful. It was a lot of fun walking through a couple DreamFactory client use cases. And Luke and I certainly invite you to email us with any questions. You can also start a hosted DreamFactory trial at genie.dreamfactory.com, and that's good for 14 days.
Yeah, and ladies and gents, thank you so much for your attention today. And I really do encourage you to check out all the other talks we have for DreamCon 2020. As Jason mentioned, we go through everything from that instant automated creation of a REST API for MySQL, SQL Server, Salesforce, SFTP, just to name a few. And then we also go into some chats with our partners about how to best secure your APIs, how best to monitor them over time, how to apply some analytics over the top of them as well, all integrating with DreamFactory alongside. We have our really interesting chat with Jason and Chris from Decision Desk regarding that Decision Desk HQ deployment for the duration of the US election. And we also have a talk around Citrix micro app development, how to build out those user-friendly, easy access, rapid generation APIs into a Citrix workspace micro app. So please head back on over to the conference page, check out those other talks. They'll all be made available to you over the course of the conference, and we can send them out to you after the fact if for whatever reason you're unable to attend those other ones. But please feel free to reach out. Hope you enjoyed today's presentation, and thank you so much for your time.